Now, do you start all these tools yourself or do you buy them?
So we started the whole process in 2015, we started companies. We started two, Narrow.io and Mailshake. And Mailshake is our biggest one. The one we started became the biggest one, but it took forever. Like it took 2.5 years of not making any money and only putting money out the door to get that to be generating money. And probably 2018 is when it started actually.
I remember when you bought it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just.
Or started it. Sorry.
Started, yeah. So it was just like it's just a grind to get it going. And during that time, I was like, fuck buying companies. Like this just takes forever to get them to product market fit, right? I'm not good at that. And maybe I'm not that I'm not good at that, but I think there are people who are like love building from scratch. Mm-hmm. I love growing. Like I love when like an idea has kind of got some wheels, like some legs, I guess, and putting wheels on it, right? And just kind of growing it from, maybe a few $1,000 to a few $1 million or $10-20 million, whatever. So it's just, I like growth more than I like getting an idea off the ground. And so to date, we've bought a lot of companies that are maybe, at least this is our thesis. They might not be in that space at that like bucket at the exact time we bought them, but companies that are in like 5th to 10th place in a category or in a space. So
you buy like a 10th place person and they're not doing so well. The CEO is probably like, I'll take a payout. Mm-hmm. And then you apply your marketing knowledge, content marketing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then make them into 1st or 3rd place or something.
3rd place, not 1st and 2nd. They're too expensive. Mm-hmm. Generally too hard because the funded company kick my butt. Mm-hmm. Like I can't compete, right? So like Mailshake, 83 players in the space. 83. When we started, it was like 30. And we didn't even intend to build in that 30 player in that space. So we pivoted into this space. So first of all, different space than we intended. But yeah, 50 more people came through the door. So I mean, it's getting easier to build SaaS, but our biggest competitor, Outreach, second biggest sales loft, they've got $100 million in their bank account like right now. Like they close more revenue a quarter than we do a year. And I just can't beat that because they've got way more engineers and whatever. But doesn't mean there's not a way to win in that space, right? Mm-hmm. So I've got no funding. All of our companies, we buy it with mostly our own capital, or when we get outside capital, it's fairly friendly. Like the way we split it is very, very favorable for us because of our track record. That like we don't need to knock it out of the park to win. Now, don't get me wrong. Like the outcome that like these larger competitors will have will be, they'll be in the billions if they succeed. But the difference is there's no if we succeed. There will be. We are succeeding right now. My company is worth more than it was yesterday. It's worth more than it was a year ago and 5 years ago, and I won't have this $1 billion exit, but I'll have 100% ownership of it. So liquidation of a startup at Series F is like founders own like 15% max. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the math, most people who founded the company aren't actually the CEO of that company. So the founders have no control over the company they started by Series F.
And you own 100%, or you and your partner?
Yeah. We have 3 partners. Between us, we own like 95, and we have employee share.
Do you use investors to buy these companies, or you just got a chunk of cash and you pop?
We bought most of our companies with our own money, and then we started buying bigger companies with outside capital.
Is that recommended, or it's just at some point you need outside capital?
I found that it's the same amount of work to grow a company as doing $100,000 a year, as $1 million a year, as $10 million a year. Same difficulty, same amount of work for me. Different problems and harder at $10 million to go because you want to go bigger, right? Mm-hmm. But at $10 million, you have $10 million to spend in revenue to go spend and do whatever you want. Like if I gave you $10 million and I said, you have to go build this company into a $15 million company or $20 million company, I think
it's plausible.
I think you have enough capital to go do something. And you have a team. And so it's not all on you. At 100,000, it's all on you because you pretty much have just enough to go hire like one person. Uh-huh. That's offshore, and it's probably going to be a dev.
So speaking of teams, how do you run all these companies? Like I'm sure like they're relatively small. And so I'm sure there's like some employee that can like do one thing at one company at another company. Do you just have like a bunch of Indian dudes running things, or like what? Yeah. How do you?
I'm the only Indian.
You're the only outsourced Indian.
I'm the only outsourced Indian guy.
We're actually in Hyderabad right now.
Yeah. So it's a great question because I think we use EOS as a framework.
What's that?
From this book called Traction by Gino Wickman. EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. Huh. It's similar to like scaling up that a lot of like funded startups use. Like pretty much it's a system, right? Rockefeller Habits, I think like OKRs would be another one. Like Google uses OKRs. Pretty much you have goals. You have a goal. You have you have a target. You have some goals that can help you achieve that target, and then you have like things you're going to do to get there. Like in EOS, it's called rocks. And every quarter you have rocks that you're trying to do, right? Like usually 3 to 5. And even breaking down from that, each department might have like 2 or 1. And then even that, like if it's a larger company, you might have like 3 per department, and each person or like sub team has a single goal that they're like, this is what I'm going to do, and I see how it rolls into the bigger kind of goal. Anyways, my point is, when you have like 3 things to do in a quarter that are like the big things that move the needle, you end up just kind of things get like alignment gets kind of there or it doesn't, right? And if it doesn't, you like
But you have different employees for each of these companies?
Each company has a different team. We try the shared resources kind of like a matrix organization. Uh-huh. It works really well if all the companies are similar size, but our companies swing from the 10 million to 500,000. So like different budgets, right? And so, different teams, and it worked better that way. Where we have shared resources, we do have one team that's shared resources, which is customer support. And it's a single team. Like we have dedicated like 2 people on Mailshake. We have one person that kind of shares between 2 other companies. And so we do have people that are split between 2 companies, but most are because they're smaller and like we want to hire a full-time person and so it's still more split the load. But the great thing about this, even though you don't have the shared teams, you have the shared learnings, and that's very very powerful, and it saves us a lot of time. So let's put it this way: we try an idea and it doesn't work at ZoomShift, our smallest company, and we will never try to do that idea at any other companies because it didn't work. Maybe it didn't work for like an outlier reason, but generally speaking, ideas generally won't work at another SaaS company in B2B. So vice versa, we find some awesome channel that works really, really well, which happens more often than not. And boom, we double down. We can do it for every single company. We can go hard at it.
And do you even have an office anymore in Austin? Anywhere?
I have an office. I have 2 offices. Like they're co-working spaces.
Did you have one in like Sydney or Australia?
So the Web Profits team has an office in Sydney and then LA.
Okay, and that's an agency, so that probably is very people heavy.
Right? Yeah, agency is all people, right? I think there's about like 90 something folks between LA, with Singapore, Sydney, and there's Melbourne. Like Australia is very regional focus, so there's a lot of like handshake deals happening there, versus like obviously United States. I don't know. I've never really shaken any of my clients' hands, at even any of our agencies, unless they're like $1 million plus deals.
But So in terms of like most of your business are SaaS or all of them, but
except for the agency. Yeah.
Why do you think running an agency sucks?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I did it again. So started Single Grain. That was my first business. First successful business in 2008, 2009 or so. And I was like, screw this. 5 years in, I was like, I want to get the F out of here. 2014, sold it, walked away.
To Eric Sue.
He's grown it. He's actually done really well with it. Well, it was like he took it over, it went down, and it went back up, like way, way higher. Turns out I did a lot of stupid stuff. But that was my first business, and that's kind of why I walked away from it. It was like I was just tired and sold it to him. But anyways, my point is, it's a great way to make money. Okay, it's a great business to not have a job. So it's if you can move away from your 9 to 5, consulting is a great way to get into running a business, but you're selling time for money. And really what happens is that under about $500,000 in revenue, or maybe let's just put it into client perspective, or actually in maybe 3 to 5 clients, $500,000 to $750K a year, you have enormous profits, like 60, 70% margins. Because you only need like one person, two people to go help you with that to service 3 to 5 clients. From that point to about $10 million in annual revenue, you need a ton of infrastructure and people and specialists and like systems and, you know, whatever that have a lot of cost before you can make higher margins again. So your margins shrink. And so if you're a $2 million agency, you're probably making more money at $500,000, $600,000 a year than $2 million because of the hard costs you have.
Yeah, because a lot of people are like, why don't you start a copywriting agency? And I've actually tried that. And the problem is, so let's say I make something for you and I deliver it and you pay me $500,000 for it. Great. I made that money minus costs, but I don't get to participate in any upside you have at all.
Yeah.
So you go on to make a bunch of money with whatever we wrote you and I get nothing. So, okay, fine. I got paid for the work. But then also I feel like you have to keep getting those clients over and over and over. And let's say everyone's like, Neville's copywriting agency is amazing. It's in the front page of the New York Times, whatever. I get 100 new clients. That might actually kill the company.
Yeah.
Like the more, if you get a big inflow of money, now you have to have a ton of people and stuff, right? Have you seen that? That's a huge problem.
And so that's why you get a lot of agencies going like ebbs and flows of like growing, contracting, growing, contracting. They're generally going up in the right, generally, or hoping to. But then you get COVID and you lose 90% of your revenue.
I had a friend who worked for an agency here that's here downtown, and 90% of the revenue came from a Dell contract.
Yeah.
And one day Dell switched.
Yeah.
And they laid off 90% of their workforce just like overnight.
And that's kind of, I would say, bad on the agency to have like so much dependency on one contract. But I can tell you, like, I've had friends who've like had the Apple contract. And they're huge. And even though they built out the rest of their agency, it was like 30, 40% of the business. Even that's a huge number, right? Like that's a lot of people to build on one singular point of failure.
But if you get a lot of business, now you have to hire a lot of people.
Yeah.
If you lose a lot of business, now you have to unfortunately fire a lot of good people.
And I think the way to circumvent that is to keep growing, right? Keep growing, building the team out.
It's like a Ponzi scheme, though.
Yeah, it's a rat race. You end up in a different rat race than being an employee, right? I think it's a great business, though. Don't get me wrong, because at Single Grain, we tried and failed like 8 other businesses. I don't know the exact number, but I think it was somewhere between 8 and 11 that you would qualify as businesses. One of them worked, and my partner we spun off businesses, so he ended up like not wanting to do consulting anymore and taking 100% ownership of that. And I got the rest of my company back and say, I'm just going to do this. And his business, I don't know, I think it was doing like $600,000 or $700,000 a year. And it was a lot of JVs and like launching info products for bloggers and whatnot. So, and there was a lot of other like lead gen and affiliate companies that we launched out of Single Grain. Tried to do a lot of software companies. All of them failed because I sucked at SaaS.
That's hilarious to hear you say, because
that was so why I got into. That's the path. How I got to what I'm doing now. This was 2009 to 2014. We work with Airbnb, few companies that got acquired by LinkedIn, Salesforce, a popular online glasses company that I can't name.
I'm sure we have no idea who
they are. Yeah. They'll ship you a sample of glasses and whatever. Anyway, so like all these companies were like just random startups at this time, right? And all the businesses, and there's lots of e-commerce companies that we work with. Shopify. We work with all these companies in their Series A, Series B timeframe. And what I found is the best companies were actually software companies. And so I was like, I'm just gonna go do that. And so I tried and failed at all these things, and it turned out like I'm really good at marketing, but I'm really bad at the rest of the things it takes to run a SaaS company. And so I sold it, and I took a job at a company called When I Work, which is one of my clients. And I was like, I'm gonna go learn SaaS. I'm gonna park myself for 5 years and like go through an exit or whatever, get a paycheck, and learn how to run a SaaS company. That took I lasted 2 years, but within 6 months, I started building Mailshake.
Nice.